Hello, this is Christian. Welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to talk about state management in PHP. So let's go into Unit 2 folder, and I'm going to create a new file here. We'll call it P1 or page 1, just P1. Okay, so what is state? Now, a state is referred to the value of a variable at a given time. Now, state is a lot of, when we talk about state in the real world, everything you see around you has a state. State of your mind, state of a car running, the state of a traffic light, right? So, for example, I have a variable called, well, just say we have a light switch equals to, it's a sign equals 0, right? So that would say this is the off state. Okay, so when the variable light has a value of 0, the state is 0. So this case is off. And if you echo that out, for example, if I put echo light, I put here state of the light, I put here the light, I'm expected to get 0. And let's say after that, I'm changing the variable of the value of light to 1. And if I echo this again, of course, you see that the light is now changed to 1, right? So let's say, save this, and I'm going to run this in the terminal only, okay, to make this really much quicker. So go to terminal, go to unit 2, and then here to run this file, just type php space and then p1.php. Okay, so yeah, I should have put a slash in here to put a line feed. Let's try again. All right, so you see that the initial state was a 0, okay, and then I echoed that out. After that, I changed the state from 0 to 1, so the light has changed its state, and then you echo that out here. Let me move this one space back. Okay, so that is how you change or retain state. Now, this works because I'm in the same file, and my variable light is in the global space. Okay, so I'm able to change and retain the state until the program ends. Then the variable data or data of the variable light is destroyed and it's moved from memory. So when the program is running, we retain this data in RAM only, right? Okay, so now if I were then to put this light inside a function, for example, let's say f of x, and I put that inside there. Now you can see the color changes. It's just to tell you that it loses visibility. This is now a local variable that is contained within, or is restricted to be visible only within the function f of x. This one here is not the same as this one. Okay, so if I run it now, and you see that I'm going to get the same 0, 0 because I did not change the state. Okay, so now if I invoke this function down here, f of x, and in here I'm going to echo out this state, light. It's a local state in here, right? I put a local here, okay? Local state. You see that now yeah, I should put a comma slash in here as well. Okay, so we have the state originally was set as 0. I invoke the function, it goes into the function, and then I have a variable called light, looks just like this one here. This is not the same as that one, by the way. And I echo the local state to 1. You see that here. And then I exit the function, echo light again. This is back to the same state up here. So I did not change the state of this variable at all. So how do you retain this state in here? If you want to make this a global, you want this to affect the global variable out here, how do you do that, right? Of course, a couple ways to do it. You can return this as a function. We return this variable back assigned to the light. Okay, you can do that. So for example, I can say return light like that. But then your light had to be changed right here, right? So now my light has been changed to the state of the function and then now light is returned back and you get 1. So let's save this and I run it again. You see that now the light with the global variable out here, the state has been changed because we call a function that returns a variable back. Okay, so that's one way to retain the state, right? You have to change the state in the global variable out here. Now, of course, there are a couple of ways to do it. If you don't do it this way, you could also do it using this way. So I'm going to go back to call the function again. Let me turn this in here. If I don't return it back, then you have to redeclare or redefine this variable using the global keyword. So if I do this, now what this line says is that I'm going to redeclare a variable called light, and I'm going to hoist this variable outside to the global space. If there is such a variable or it existed outside the global space, overwrite that. Okay, so it's same thing as you do outside here. You're reassigning light to a variable to another value. So now, even though I don't return it, I'm able to access the data in here in the global space. So let's save this and let's change it to yeah, that's fine. So I'm gonna clear my console down here and I'm gonna run it again. So you can see that the variable or the value persists, right? Because I made that a global variable now. So anywhere else in the program, after this function has been invoked, the light now has been changed. So the state has been changed. That's one way. That's another way, right? Or of course, you can also do like this too. This also work. After I declare the variable and assign to value 1, you can call the global array and put a variable in here. Assign that to the new variable. Okay, so this variable, this key in here is actually a variable you can use outside of your code. So this is the same as this one here. Okay, and just to show that it works, for this example, I'm going to put 10 here. Okay, so I can do that, and as you can see, if I run my code, I should get 10. Okay, so the state has been changed to 10. So that's a third way, right? And yet, of course, there's another way. So instead of doing this way, you can also do something like this. Use what's called a session. Okay, a session array. In here, I can call it, so using a session, you can use any variable you want. It doesn't have to be the same as the variable, as the light. It doesn't have to be, but you can. Now, this is different from the globals array here, okay? So here I was, again, assigned to light. To use it, though, I can't just do this, right? Because this is not accessible like you would use the globals array. So if I just do this, I'm going to get the same as before, no change in the global value. Okay, so to make this work, I now assign a variable session with a key of light has a value of whatever it was, 10. Now to get that data back, you will have to assign a variable, same as say light here, from that session array. So it's just like a variable. It's like just an array, but this is a global array, right? A global array is accessible everywhere in your code. And then now, if I go back and run it again, you see that now the state has been altered, changed, because I store the value of the state in this global variable called session with a key of light. Again, this light here is just a variable. This is a key. This is not the same as global's light here. Okay, this key here is actually a variable. This is not. I can call it A, and then it has to be A down here, right? So if we change back to 1, and then you will see that the value is now 1. Okay, so the session is a little bit different. Okay, so these are just a few of the different ways how you can retain state. Now, the question is, I guess, how do you pass this data or the state of this data to another page? Because you know that on a web page, everything on the web page is stateless, right? You cannot retain the state of a variable once you navigate to another page. So how do you pass this data over to another variable or another page? So let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to go and create a new file called P2. This is the second page now. And for this to work, I'm going to run this in the browser in a minute. But let's say that I want to retain the state of light over here. How do I do that? Well, you may be tempted to put this light in the include file. Okay, well that doesn't work because you include a file, then every time you re-include or include a file, everything is reset in the include file. Okay, so that will not work. And so to do that, you have a couple of options. So well, let's go in. Let's go over here and let's say that I want to kind of redo this a little bit here. If I run this in a browser, this is what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to show you. So when I run that, see on the browser, it looks like this. It looks pretty ugly, right? Not as nice as we saw earlier. However, if you do a source view, you see that it looks exactly the same as like your terminal. Okay, because the terminal is, I think it's the same representation as the source view in your code here. Okay, but not in the HTML view. Okay, this is HTML. So to have that nice line break, you have to put a BR, right? Here we put a /n to see this. Okay, so I want to be able to pass this data state over to page 2. Okay, so let's see how that's done. So here, the globals variable, this is will not work. Well, let's figure it out. Let's see if it works or not. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this on and turn this off. So we know for sure that I'm going to turn this off. We know for sure that light works because we proved that earlier. And just to make sure that it works again, okay, we see that we changed light from 0 to 1, and then it retains that light. Okay, what about if I go to page 2 and I'm going to just copy this statement, okay, and put over here on page 2. Okay, well I can't navigate that over. So you have to put a link somewhere here. So let's just say that right here, we're going to put a back out to HTML. I'll put a link here. And we'll put page 2 as a link. Okay. And then I'll put another link back in page 2 to go back to page 1. So this one goes back to page 1. So we can go back and forth between the two. Okay, so let's go back to the browser and refresh our page. So here is, let me make it a little bit nicer. Let's put a H1. So it's nice and bold. Same thing here. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so page 1, my state is 1. If I go to page 2, you see that light is not defined, right? Even though we use the global variable, the globals, to store that in the global array, it does not persist if you navigate to another page. So we lost that globals variable. And so therefore you say the variable light is not defined in line 2. Okay, so here in line 2, this is what the light is. It doesn't exist. Even though in page 1, we did not, we didn't have to declare it. I mean, what I mean is I can turn this off. Let's turn both of these off, and it should still work, right? Let's see. So here we go. You see that the state, I did not put any echo here. I called the function first. I echo the local state here, which is a value of 1, and then assign that to the globals array. And then outside the function, I just invoke it here. I call it here, even though it has a squiggly line, it just tells you that it doesn't exist, but it does because we're using this globals array. So I'm able to access that no problem here, as you can see here. Okay. However, when we navigate to the other file, this global loses scope. It is no longer there. Okay. So for this to work, you would do one of two ways, right? One is you can append that light to this variable here. So you can do something like that. I pass the light, the state of the light, to the page 2, and then over here, I have to get that back. So say light is coming from the get, and then I get the light back from the URL. And then I can echo that light out, and then I have my state. Okay, so go back to the browser, and here we go. I'm going to go back to page 1. The state is 1. If I go to page 2, you see that my state is now still 1 because I obtained that from the URL. Right? That's one way, although it's not the best way because it's not secure. You can see it. You don't want to see that, right? So that's one way to retain state. Another way is, of course, you can put this to a form. Or we had the same kind of similar result, right? Just to again to show that how it works, we can put here. I put a form here, and then let's put a h1 again. So it's really big. In here, I put the input. Type will be hidden. I don't want to show that. And the name will be light as well. And the value is, of course, light. Okay, you pass that data to the form, and then you put here the input. I could put a button here. We'll call it page 2 for now. Okay, so when you click on that, then it's going to send the form data over to a post, and the action is going to go to page 2. Okay, so I have a different link down here using a value. Then on page 2, to retrieve the data, I'm not going to use the get. Instead, I'm going to use the post. So I'm just going to duplicate that and put here the post instead. And I'll turn this off. I won't use that. Well, I mean, you can, but it's going to get from the light. Whichever link, yeah, you can leave both on. Whichever link you get is you're going to get that. For sure, we're going to get from the post if you click the button. Okay, so let's go to the browser. Back to page 1. Here is the P1, the link navigation. Well, yeah, this one didn't work. Let's turn that off. It's causing an error because this one here, we invoke that, so it doesn't work. So you have to really kind of check it first if it exists or not, right? But I'm going to just do the first one and the second one, the post. So I won't click the link. I'll click the form instead. Let's go back. Okay, so we know that worked before. Now this is the form. When I click on the form, right, you see that the state is retained, and we don't get that from the get, we get it from the post, so it's not visible here, which is now secure, right? So that's another way to do it. But then what if I have a page 3, a page 4, a page 10, or 100 pages? Now you don't want to keep, creating forms or passing that to the URL pattern here. What you do is you will use probably the most efficient one in PHP is called a session. Okay, so the session here, like we did in this scenario here, is the way to go. So in order to use session, again, if I put session here, let me turn this off. And I have to get the data back from that session variable in order to use it. So now once I get the session back, then I can pass it around and so on. But it doesn't mean that again, this is the same as the global variable here. It only exists within this page. If I go to page 2 over here, and if I try to get the light from that session, if I say light equals from this session, I think we call it I'm going to make it so it's also light. Let's change it back to light over here. Okay, so we know that let's make this a 10 so we know for sure it's a different value. All right, let's go to the browser. And here we go, page 1. So, well, one more error. Gotta fix that. There's no A here. It's called light. I wish it would just change it automatically, right? Okay, to refresh it. So we got the state is now 10. If I go to page 2, it doesn't matter which one I use. If I go to page 2, you see that the session is not defined. It's unknown, right? Let's see, page 2. Yeah, so this is unknown. Okay. Now, in order for this to work, to use session, you have to turn on the session in PHP. So to take advantage of this session, it allows you to pass data from one page to another page to any page you want, because this session will be contained in the global space. So all you have to do is at the top of your file, you call this session start function, section start underscore start. Okay, once you call that function, it will activate the session, and then this session variable will exist in the global space. And then anywhere in your page, you want to use that to retrieve the data from this object or this array. You just have to turn this on. So here, if I want to use it, I would have to turn it on also. So session start. And now any page that has a session start will have access to all the variables inside the session variable inside your file. And of course, it's an array, so you can pass as many elements you want in here. So now you'll see that it works beautifully. If I go back to page 1, and if I go to page 2, you see that I'm able to retain state, right? I did not pass data through the URL or through the form. I did not do that at all. And that is how you use session to retain state. And of course, let's just say I'm at page 2 and I want to change the data. And if I go to page 3, let's create another one. I'm going to copy the page 2 and we'll call it page 3, right? And in the link for page 2, let's add another link here. I'm going to copy that and put it here, page 3. And then here's page 3. And so, well, actually, this is page 1, page 2. Okay, I did it wrong. Let's copy this. Put it here in page 2. That goes to page 3. And page 3 can go back to page 2 and page 1. Okay. So now, let's say in page 2, after I got the data from page 1, I output that state, and then I'm going to change that state to a new state. Now, I have to use this variable, right? Assign that with a new state. Let's just say we'll put 50 here. Okay. So when I navigate to page 3 or page 1 for that matter, from this point on, then this session called light initially was 1, has been changed to 10, changed to 50. And so over here, when I print the light, I should get 50. Okay, so let's go back to the browser. Let's go back to page 1. Initially, we started with 10. But go to page 2. I still retain 10. I changed that to 50 now. If I go to page 3, you see that now has been changed to 50. If I go back to page 2, it's still going to be at 50 because I did not change that state, right? So now you see that I'm able to pass data from one page to another page to another page using session. And that is a very powerful feature to retain data, okay? Using a session on the server side. This is not using local storage how you would use in the client side. Okay, so using that feature then, you have a lot of things you can do with that feature, right? You can turn things on and off. A very common feature is you check the login state of a user. If you allow a user to register on your site, log in, once that user has been logged in successfully, then you check the state of that login user session variable. If it's active, then you allow that user to see certain restricted pages on your site. If they're not logged in, then you would not allow them to see those content. And that is what state is used for. Right? So this is, again, just a very simple demonstration of how state can be managed and retained or maintained in PHP using session. And finally, the last thing is if you want to destroy the session, then you can use a session destroy. So let's say that after page 3, if I got that, once I'm done with that one, I don't need to use session anymore, then you call the session destroy. So right here, session There's a few difference between session destroy and session unset, but for now, I just focus with the destroy. So destroy just basically remove all your sessions. Okay, if you have one, you can remove this one. Remove all your sessions because I could have one for light, one for user login, one for color, whatever they are. This will destroy all your sessions. If you want to just turn off one particular one, you will use the unset. But for now, let's just say I'm destroy that. Okay, so now if I go back to my page for the last time, go start on page 1, my session started. I go to page 2, and then my session now is set to 50. If I go to page 3, it's 50 now, and I turn off session and destroy that. If I go to page 2, I should get an error. Okay, so again, here you go. The light is 95 because we remove that. We destroy that variable in the session. Even though the session still exists, that session global variable called session, it still exists, but all the keys are destroyed. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful to kind of guide you to do your assignment for the guest book. And if you have any questions, please let me know.